Hello and welcome to Season 2 of Stuck in the Mud, the podcast. In this season, I'm opening up some of the bigger themes from my book, Stuck in the Mud, Stories of Hope for When You're Stuck. If you're interested in the book, it is on general release. What I say to people is, look for the yellow boots. Now, in this season, I'm interviewing a bunch of different people in a way that I hope you'll find interesting. What we've done is chosen a theme, prepared 4 questions each for each other, and then taken it in turns to open up the conversation to see where we go. I hope that you enjoy all of these conversations, and I really hope to see you soon. Hi, and welcome to Season 2 of the Stuck in the Mud podcast. I'm John Prockter, and today I'm asking 4 questions of my friend Tom Elliott. He's actually going to be asking me 4 questions as well, and today we're going to be talking about creativity. So, Tom, thank you so much for agreeing to do this. Tell us a little bit about yourself as we start.
Well, it's my pleasure, John. A bit about me. So I live in Gloucestershire. I'm not a farmer, but I live in Gloucestershire, and outside of COVID, I am a touring comedy magician, travel around the country in all kinds of places, from theatres and comedy clubs to schools and churches, doing a whole load of things, really, comedy and magic. During COVID, I've set up this little thing called Focused Creative, which we'll talk about, I'm sure, throughout this interview.
Amazing. Now, as I say, we're going to be asking each other some questions, and I don't know what Tom's going to ask me. Tom doesn't know what I've got for him, but we are on this general topic of creativity. So I'm hoping that we're going to have a good time. This will be interesting to you, and I'm going to kick off, Tom, with my very first question, and we'll see how we get on. So this is my first question to you. So I met you, Tom, through your comedy. So to me, you're Tom Elliott, comedy magician, not musician. Although, are you? Maybe you are.
Well, it started that way.
Okay. So I met you as a comedy magician. What has made you switch your focus to a creative community?
Well, so I've always enjoyed, some of my favorite gigs have been working with other people. So other performers, even down to chatting to my graphic designer about a new poster. I just love that kind of vibe when creative people come together and they either do it like an event or a project together, or whether it's just creative people sat around chatting about what they do. It sets me up, and I love hearing ambitions and plans and all of that stuff. And so for a long time, I've wanted to set up some form of kind of community that gather, but I was never really sure what that looked like. And then as I chatted to creatives, one of the things I'd been doing is in my kind of comedy magic journey was became a bit of a fan of goal setting. And so as I spoke to creatives, one thing that I picked up time and time again is that creatives lacked the kind of clarity and the confidence and the community they need to achieve those ambitious goals.
Right.
And so that's what kind of led to setting up the Focused Creative Community.
Wow.
John, I've got a question for you. Talking about creativity, you've just launched this book called Stuck in the Mud. And after all, this podcast is primarily about you. So let's ask you, first of all, what inspired the book, John?
Mate, it's a funny thing because I mean, I made a slip of the tongue about magic and music. I've been a musician for probably 25 years, maybe a little bit longer, and so my thing has been very much music, but writing has never been a particularly strong thing, to be honest with you. The reason why I actually started to put pen to paper is because in my work, I work a lot with young people. I work a lot with trainee youth workers and people who are, in transition moments in their lives, young people in transition moments, adults in transition moments, older young people becoming adults in the kind of in their ministry walk or in their professional walk. And what started to happen was, over the course of a few years, there were a number of people who were going through very serious things in their lives. And I was spending a lot of my time kind of pastoring. I'm not a church leader, but I use that word kind of pastoring, or now I wouldn't use counseling because I'm not a counselor, but, kind of helping people through their struggles, helping them to get from A to B, or helping them to get unstuck, if you like. It got so difficult, actually, that the organization I worked for also employed my wife, because there were so many things on my shoulders that I just couldn't cope. And
Right.
there were a load of conversations with people going, John, is this, are you okay? Is this working? Do you need more support? Do we need to change the vision a little bit so we don't have so many people that need your time? And I mean, there were a load of complicated sort of things that we went through, but one of the really helpful things for me, one of the things that helped me to order my approach to, I guess, loving people and helping people, was to start writing it down. And it began to sort of flow out of me in the form of stories. I don't know if you've been in this situation, Tom, but when someone's just said, I don't know, I'll use a silly example, but someone says, oh, my cat's just died. One of the worst things you can say is, oh yeah, my cat died. It's not helpful, is it? It's
Sure,
like,
yeah.
It's like, oh, so you're like putting the focus on yourself. So you can't really do that when you're helping other people. But when I was starting to write, that's exactly what I started to do. Instead of saying to people face to face, oh, actually I've been through that sort of situation, I actually put it on paper. And what I found was that when people read your experience, it helps them to deal with this stuff by themselves in a reflective kind of way. And so that's how the writing kind of came about. And I really feel I've kind of caught a bug for it. Yeah.
Love it. Love it.
Mate, let me go on to my next question for you, because I want to talk to you about your podcasting. Now, this is something that I find quite nerve-wracking. This is only the second season of my podcast. The first season I got myself all wrapped up in knots about, but I've listened to your podcasts. You've had many very different ones, and I wanted to ask you about about maybe the interview, the guest that you most had fun with, or most learnt from, or thought was most helpful in your creativity.
Wow, that's a difficult one, because I had lots of podcast guests, and I've enjoyed many of them. I haven't enjoyed one or two, but no, I love podcasting. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think it's much harder than it seems.
That's my experience. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think, people listening don't realize just how hard it is, not only to deliver the thing and
Yeah.
get it running smooth and the interviews flowing well, but just particularly an interview, like a guest thing. I found that I've done 2 interview based podcasts, and I get to the 12-month mark, and then I just feel like exhausted of guests and that fit the theme, that fit the idea. And so I always have to kind of take a bit of a break after that 12-month milestone, because a weekly podcast, it's quite demanding to get it out every week on time, consistent, with a guest that's exciting, that's relevant, that's different from the others. And oh my days, it's a lot harder than people think. But I have my favorite guest. Well, there's no doubt about it, really. But all of my guests were amazing. But I had the opportunity. December 2018, I took a bit of a bold move, and I messaged one of my favorite comedians, Milton Jones. Okay, I messaged him on Twitter. I was surprised, and I didn't even know that he followed me, to be honest. So I was really surprised when I discovered that he did.
Wow.
Not sure how that happened, pure chance. Messaged him saying, Milton, would you be up for just a coffee? I'll come and join you wherever you are. We'll if you're up for it, I just want to learn from you. I want to pick your brains about comedy. And to my surprise, a few days later, he responded with an absolute yes. So
Wow.
that was an absolute win. I went to see him, had a conversation, had a coffee, about an hour long, just came away blown away. Like, I learned so much. And he invited me then to come and see him in action. It was a kind of warm-up gigs ahead of his
Wow.
tour that is currently playing. he was warming up these gigs. He invited me along. I saw some of the stuff that he was teaching me, implemented.
Wow.
I went to him a few times, was able to kind of keep in touch, and trying not to be one of those annoying kind of stalkerish fans, but at the same time trying to appreciate the time that he was given. And so anyway, I then reached out and I said, Milton, I run this podcast. It's about kind of well-being and how to live well. My motto for life, John, is live well, dream big, laugh often. And
Oh, wow.
so Milton came on and talked about his career in comedy. Obviously, that relates well to what I do. But also about, just mention one or two things about well-being. And you might know as well as me, the comedy industry is an interesting one. It's full of people that on stage appear very confident, appear very happy with life, all of that. But behind it, there's a lot of insecurity in comedy. There's a whole load of stories that are out there that you can hear of comedians who just wrestle with this kind of well-being, and yet on stage, their creativity, I guess, helps them to come alive and live this kind of, more positive, more well-being. But off stage, they struggle. So anyway, we had a bit of a chat about that. I could listen to Milton talk about comedy all day. I just think full of wisdom and one of the nicest guys in show business that I've ever met, and down to earth as well. Like there's no kind of show business around Milton. He's just him.
Yeah. Oh, wow. And I don't know if you saw it, but I did a blog with a comedian, an old friend of mine called Alex Sivright, and I found exactly what you just said through that conversation with him, where he wrestles with anxiety, he wrestles with depression, and bereavements he's had in his life have been very difficult. But when he's able to turn it on, it's something that gives him life. It's a really interesting phenomenon.
Yeah, it's an interesting. I think that's the power of creativity, though, isn't it? It kind of brings you into this new phase, this new kind of. I think creativity, in some ways, is quite healing of challenges. And a lot of people, not just comedians, but I know a lot of authors that engage. They write books as a way of expressing something within them that helps them overcome stuff. Part of what your book's about, you just said it in your answer to question one, really, was about kind of outworking the challenges that you were seeing in other people, and the challenges for yourself as you kind of carried that burden. I guess my next question follows on quite nicely. A lot of creatives hit a block of kind of limiting beliefs. I want to know a bit about the work ethic, but I also want to know, did you get to a point of going, no one's ever going to publish this or read this, or all those doubts that creep into an author's mind or any creative's mind? Am I really doing something that's worth investing my time, or is this just a bit of John fun?
Yeah. So that, I mean, that's quite kind of close to home for me, because I've been an author for all of 5 minutes, and and I had an interesting kind of experience in that, as I said in my first answer, I was throwing stuff down on the page with real passion, and I took, I don't know, about 4 months to write the initial manuscript, and it got honed over time. But then I had this like horrible moment, and it happened to me a couple of times, where I started to say to people, okay, I've written a book, like, how might I do this? And the very first person I spoke to said, is anyone waiting for what you've written?
Hard question.
That's a hard question. It hit me, because what I realized was that I'd had a perception that I had a finite amount of words in me, a finite amount of ideas. I put them on the page, and then through this one conversation, it was, you need to start a blog, so that there's a group of people who are waiting for what you're writing. And I was like, great, how long do you think that might take to grow? And they're like, a few years. And I was like, I need to just get, like, I actually just felt like I need to give this up. Like, maybe I'll just post the book online and just be done with it, and just go, okay, that was fun.
Sure.
That was hard. That was really hard. I mean,
I'm going to sneak in another question, John, and you can finish your answer in a sec. But the next bit, and it's a slightly extra question, but what kept you going?
Oh man. I mean, that I'm a little bit arrogant.
Confessions, I love it.
Yeah, confess. I am a little bit arrogant, but that insecurity was difficult because I felt like this. I felt like what I was writing was good, and 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 the thing that kept me going. I tell you, here's a little secret for you, a little creativity secret that you've probably heard a million times. But feedback is something I don't enjoy. I don't want feedback. Thanks. I'm quite happy. But when I do ask for feedback, I ask for it one at a time. So when I was feeling like I need to give this up, like this isn't working, I haven't got it in me to start a community of people who want to hear what I'm saying. So I sent it to one author and I waited until he got back to me. And it took a few weeks. He got back to me with, uh, that was good. No idea what it was about. Uh, but the thing that kept me going was I created some stepping stones, basically, and the stepping stones were other authors who could speak into me, and I let them speak one at a time, and I molded and shaped the book based on what they were saying until I sent it to about 6 over a year, and then was like, okay, I've started a little blog. I've focused on improving the text. Now I'm feeling confident. So that confidence grew by just small bits of feedback. But what I was going to say just before you asked that was there was a second time when I hit a wall, and that was just after the first publishing contract fell through.
Yeah.
I had a pretty devastating moment when a relationship, which I talk a lot about in the book, having good relationships, and then I had a bad relationship with a publisher, which was a bit of misunderstanding, a bit of a little bit of kind of talking at cross purposes, but we had to stop. And that was another moment where my confidence just hit the ground.
Sure.
And I was
Sure.
like, I'm just going to give this up. Yeah, those were difficult days.
Let me tell you just a quick funny story
Do it.
about feedback. A few years ago now, I had the opportunity to meet for a couple of hours in London with Jeffrey Durham. Now, I don't know if you're old enough to know Jeffrey Durham. He was known back in the day on TV as the Great Soprendo. So he was married to Victoria Wood, right?
Mm.
So that for a while he was married to Victoria Wood. He's a magician and
Right.
very, very credible magician. And he's given up magic now, but he was offering his services as like a director
Mm.
for professional magicians. He would only see a full timer. He wouldn't see anyone else. And I applied for this just to explore it. And he invited me for lunch in London, having watched a video of my performance. I went expecting lots of nice little compliments, followed by some little tips to make me better.
Mm.
Well, I couldn't have been more shocked when I got there. He was a very nice man, very, very gentle, very kind, very welcoming, very warm.
Mm.
However, very brutal. And he
Right.
literally taught the whole 2 hours from the minute he started speaking about my show. He tore it apart, and he tore it apart brutally. And I sat there taking it in, not really knowing how to respond, but he just ripped it to shreds. Well, let's just say at the end of the conversation, I'm putting my coat on, and he says, "Tom, I'll give you a call this week just to check that you're okay."
Wow.
But do you know, I say that I'm not saying that to make Jeffrey look bad. He was a lovely guy.
Yeah.
But the thing is, I walked away, and this is why feedback's so important, and I think it's
Yeah.
so difficult as creatives because creativity is a vulnerable thing to share.
Yeah. It's a
Um,
hard thing, isn't it?
but when the feedback he gave, it ruined me in terms of what I had, but
Mm.
it also moved me forward because he gave me a way of moving forward, and he
Wow.
gave me strategic things to change, things to stop doing, things to start doing.
Yeah.
It was transformational in many ways.
Mm. And actually, I mean, I would hope that the people that I would have that relationship with would be people I know really well. I think it's perhaps more difficult when it's someone you don't know, you've been looking up to from afar.
Sure.
But there are a couple of people I know who I've been that for and who've been that for me. And that is tricky. Let me ask you about writing, Tom, because we've been talking about my book, and I've actually been wanting to ask you this for a while. There are one or two people that I know who I have thought, why hasn't this person written a book yet? So my question to you is, if you wrote a book about creativity, what would be one of the main themes you would just love to talk about?
Oh, John, it's an interesting time you asked that question.
You're right, aren't you?
Because well, so the thing is, as I've grown this focused creative community,
Yeah.
and as I've connected with quite a lot of creatives and tried to figure out what are the challenges, and as I said, the main challenges are clarity, confidence, community,
Wow.
and this belief that in order to be an author, you have to get a publishing company. In order to be a singer, you have to be signed up by Simon Cowell. It's not true.
No.
I believe actually many of us can just get on with it, and everything's figure outable, right?
Yeah.
And so I've started to ponder this, and so I don't know where this will land. So I'm kind of speaking about this as if there's already a book in the pipeline. There kind of is, but there kind of isn't, because I don't. It could all change. So, but the one idea is I want to establish what the idea of being a focused creative. And when I talk about being a focused creative, it's someone who has clarity. It's about where they're going, what their end goal is. It's someone who kind of has the confidence to make traction, who are kind of biased towards doing something, getting it done.
Yeah.
And also the community, someone who's connected with other creatives to get input from, to get insight from, like me. We've just talked about feedback and mentors and everything else. All of those are part of what it is to be a focused creative. So on one hand, there's that little book drifting in the background about what it is to be a focused creative that is moving towards an ambitious goal.
Wow.
The other one is just 101. This is a book that I've kind of pre-written, and it's just bookshelved for the minute. Is 101 ways to make traction on your ambitious creative goals. So it's just little things that I've learned. And when you've got no money to do something creatively and you want to do something, how do you go about doing that? Well, 101 secret might just be go and crowdfund campaign. Share a little bit of my experience of that. How do you move forward on your ambitious goals?
Wow.
So I don't know. Maybe there's 2 books in there, but
Well,
it will come eventually.
Yeah, I mean, I said to you in the previous one that I had this fear that there was a finite amount of words in me. The irony of the predicament that I was in, and I say this to encourage you and anyone listening, is that my book Stuck in the Mud is like, I want to say 30,000 words. It's about 30,000 words. It's not a big book, but in order to promote Stuck in the Mud over the last 2.5 years, I've written 80,000 words on a blog. I've also written another book and a half, which are yet to be talked about. It wouldn't surprise me if you've got 3 or 4 books worth of stuff, because once you start, it starts to flow, your experience, then you find out more and you learn and you learn and you grow and you grow. So, I'd say that as an encouragement to you that there's probably more on the way.
Oh, now that's interesting. And that's kind of provoked me to get on with it. And maybe I should take my own advice and literally get on with it.
Yeah.
John, I want to ask you about your work ethic. I know that writing a book is by no means a simple job. A bit like we said about podcasting, writing a book, particularly if you've got publishers who are giving you deadlines and word counts and everything else, and probably giving you a heap of feedback that you're battling with as well. What's your work ethic? How did you get a book written in and amongst a day job and everything else?
This is actually a good opportunity. I love talking about a fitness community that I'm a part of called Team Body Project. I love these guys. And the reason why I start with Team Body Project is because when I started with them, I was quite an overweight guy. And there's something about writing that has in some ways come out of learning life discipline. And I'm not saying for a second that to be successful, you have to lose that excess weight. For me, though, there was something about the reason why I was overweight that was holding me back from achieving some goals. By getting some discipline over eating, of movement, of exercise, there was a snowballing effect that helped me to kind of figure out sleep patterns, really kind of get control of that stuff. It is interesting to me, when I look back, to think that learning life discipline helped me to very much to kind of deal with my kind of work ethic as well. So, kind of figuring this stuff out, I have to be honest as well. I'm quite fortunate in my work that creativity is implied in
Cool.
youth work and Christian ministry. If something's going to help someone else grow, then I can devote a small amount of time to it. But I think the good news is when creativity is working, when the juices are flowing, you can't help but get on. But when things were more difficult, discipline and a plan and sticking to it were the things that got me through, the things that kept stuff going. And there were some days when I knew I had to write, and I knew I wasn't up for it, and I knew that there was nothing that was really inspiring me. There were times when I wrote sections on those days in like a different font, so that I knew this is going to need redoing, but at least I'm doing it. Do you know what I mean? So I knew that it was going to be, I knew it was going to be a bit rubbish, but I was like, right, I'm going to write this, I'm going to put it in a different font. And then in a couple of days when I'm thinking, right, let's go, I'm totally on this, I deal with that first. And so there were little tricks and things to help me kind of move forward when things weren't working. But yeah.
That's a great idea though, because so much of it is just about showing up and writing, showing up and writing, showing up and writing.
Yeah.
And in fact, one of the things Milton shared with me was about going back to ideas time and time again, because what that kind of bit of blank that you've got, suddenly you reframe it in a different way. You've had a different life experience that influences this. And all of a sudden that kind of half sentence that you've written with a full stop at the end suddenly becomes a full sentence because it's pinged.
It's pinged.
And so much of it, but it's hard. I know that sitting down with a blank page without motivation, trying to write when you haven't got any ideas, that's not a simple activity. So good work on pushing through.
So I've got I think this is my fourth question for you. This is my last question for you now. Do you know what? This follows on really nicely from your question, but I wrote this question. It's so long, I have to like read it from my phone. So listen to this. Okay, so we find our creativity in different ways. I, for example, am more in the right frame of mind after a shower and a shave. Okay.
Very interesting.
What's the most surprising creativity hack that you've heard either from your own experience or from your community?
Interesting. Well, I did read the other day a statistic. I think it's like 70. This was science fact that 72% of people have their creative ideas in the shower. So you're well established in that one. What is the most creative hack? I mean, I think part of it is the showing up. It's not particularly creative hack, but part of it is just showing up time and time again. But do you know the beautiful thing that's come out of this focused creative community? It's a really simple little framework that we use for conversation. So this is less about, because it's a whole range of creative expression. So we've got voiceover artists, we've got content creators, we've got authors, we've got screenwriters, we've got a whole bunch of different type of people pursuing all different creativity. And that's when I first started the idea, a few kind of businessy people were saying, Tom, you need to narrow it down to one, like magicians, or authors, you need to get one. And I was like, I know what you mean from a marketing standpoint, but actually this is about bringing people together. And it's been amazing to see people come together. We follow this simple framework. We just ask the 4 questions. What can you do to improve the quality? What can you do to create an opportunity? how can you extend your reach and how can you generate some revenue? Because a lot of these guys are either full-time or they're moving towards trying to make a career out of what they do.
Yeah.
And so we've been asking these questions, and one of the beautiful things about it is different expressions of creativity coming together, just talking about those questions, some unbelievable kind of results that come of it. And people go, oh, I've never thought of it that way, but because I've talked to a voiceover artist, I've suddenly clicked. And so I think
Amazing.
the big secret for creativity is, for a lot of people, and this might not work for everyone, I think it probably depends on personality as well, but it's the community around you. It's the other people you're talking to, just bouncing ideas off, sharing your obstacles, celebrating your wins. That's a big part of what we do.
Yeah.
And just bouncing ideas off of each other. It's amazing what can come as a result.
Mate, that's probably the best hack ever, because we get, well, I mean, creators, we navel gaze a lot, don't we? We look at our own stuff with our own people, but how brilliant that the answer to I mean you just said it, but the answer to a writer could be in a could be in a voiceover artist. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Do you know, I look forward, we have our calls on Mondays, and I look forward to Mondays so much now. We run 2 calls, hour and a half each, and I just love it, because I don't do much. I really don't do much. I just facilitate the call. But meanwhile, all of these people are chatting away, and the atmosphere in the room is buzzing as we celebrate each other.
Mate, and that is just thrilling to hear. I love that so much.
John, I've got to ask you, most importantly, first of all, I want to ask you what's next in your journey as an author, and obviously then finish with, where can people get the book?
Oh, mate, those are good questions. Thank you so much for asking those. Let me start with let me start with Stuck in the Mud. So Stuck in the Mud's on general release. I mean, I say this to people just because I find it funny. If you can, buy it from Waterstones, just because that's hilarious. Just, you know, what has John Prockter, what business have I got having a book in the online store in Waterstones? Buy it from there because it's funny. But it is about but actually, seriously, I mean, you can get it from any Christian bookshop. You can get it from Amazon. You can get it from Waterstones. I've just learned actually it's not available everywhere in the world yet. So I found that bummed me out a little bit. So in the States, it's released on the 22nd of April, I think, but you can actually get it internationally as well. So that's really good. But yeah, I mean, it's been released by Lion Hudson, so it's a proper publisher. You can kind of get it from anywhere. But yeah, the place that I think most people go is Amazon. There is a great website actually, if you are thinking of getting it, called bookshop.org. I like bookshop.org because they support local businesses. So if you can get it from bookshop.org, do that.
Can I set you a little challenge? Well, you might have already done this challenge, but you might not admit to it, John.
Go on.
And that is, have you been to Waterstones yet and taken a little selfie with your own book?
I haven't, because they're all closed.
Trying to purchase your own book.
What I'm thinking of doing when the bookshops reopen is going to the Waterstones in Telford, where I live, and being like, do you have Stuck in the Mud by John Prockter?
You should so do that. And please let me know. Can you record it? And
I'll record it, because they'll go, no.
Oh, well, it'll be fun doing it.
It'll be fun doing it. They'll say, we can order it in. Yeah. So the main part of your question was what's next. Well, I'm pleased you asked. So my next project is a novel. So Stuck in the Mud isn't a novel, but the next one is a novel. I'm writing a young reader novel called Hikaru, Name Above All Names, and it's a multi-dimensional world based on a gospel narrative, and it's full of beautiful illustrations. It's set in a kind of anime manga style, and it's a pretty exciting adventure novel. And I've actually been working on that nearly as long as I've been working on Stuck in the Mud. It's a funny story, but you know, I said to you that I finished the Stuck in the Mud manuscript in about 4 months and sent it to someone. I got so bored of waiting for them to send it back that I started writing a novel. But
Amazing.
yeah, but I'll be completely honest with you. Writing a novel is probably 20 times harder than writing a kind of, yeah, I mean, my book is a reflective, theological,
Sure.
helpful lifestyle book. Writing a novel is so hard. And it's taken a year and a half just to get to the point of finishing the artwork. Um, the editing process with that is much harder, but I'm really excited about that. And every day I'm talking with the artist. She's sending me pictures and sketches, and I send her storyboards, and she sends them back finished. And
Wow.
it's a really, yeah. I mean, I'm hopeful that that's going to find a good audience, but that's really exciting. Yeah.
Man, John, we need to do another conversation because I've got a whole million of other questions to ask you now, all about that. But
Yeah.
that's amazing.
Oh, mate, thank you so much. And it's been
Where can people get? Oh,
absolutely.
you've already answered that. Sorry,
No, good.
Waterstones.
Go on.
Waterstones.
Oh
Ask.
yeah,
I don't know
yeah.
if you read the
Go
book
into
or not.
Waterstones and be like, "Do you have anything by John Procter? A
Do
J.R.
it.
Hart? Do you have anything by J.R. Hart? Do you have Fly Fishing by J.R. Hartley? Do you remember that advert?
No, no.
Well,
Sorry,
your
it's long.
pop's not old enough for that. Yeah,
No.
earlier on you said to me you might not be old enough, and I'm thinking I'm certain I'm older than you.
It's all right. I was just being kind.
No, that's absolutely fine. Tom, this has been absolutely brilliant. Can you why don't we finish this off with you telling the listeners and telling me, first of all, how they can connect with you, and secondly, how they can connect with your community, because I think this idea of this focused community, this if you're creative, the answers being kind of in the mouths of other creatives and you facilitating that. It's a brilliant concept. It sounds like a fantastic community. I see you posting about it all the time. Tell us how we can connect with that and how people can connect with you.
Sure. Well, if you want a comedy magician in the year 2048 or something or other when comedy resumes, then you can find me at tom-elliott.org. That's Elliott with two L's, two T's. Otherwise, you get a Scottish sidekick. So just go careful with that one. But in terms of the focused creative community, sure. I mean, if listeners here are if you're a creative, full-time, part-time, hobbyist, I don't mind. If you've got ambitious goals and you want a bit of kind of support, accountability, if you need the clarity, the confidence, the community to move forward with that, you just head to focusedcreative.co.uk. Find me on Instagram, Focused Creative. Particularly if you find me on Instagram, send me a DM. You can come as a guest for one session for free. And then it's a paid community, but come for a session, see what you think. If it works for you, come and join us. Yeah, I'd love to connect with any creatives out there. I just love chatting creativity.
This has been so good. And I think you're right. Perhaps we need a follow-up conversation, another follow-up podcast. That'll be really good talking about that stuff. But listen, this is where I'm going to leave it. Thank you so much for listening today. Thank you, Tom, for being with me. And I really hope to see you all soon.